Hey, it's Manny Navarro from The Athletic, joined once again by Carlos Ledo of the MIA All Day podcast. It is Thursday, right around 5:30 p.m. Carlos, in 9 days, the Hurricanes and the Gators will meet in Gainesville, renewing a rivalry that really hasn't been much of a rivalry the last, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years, because these teams don't play very often, but it once was a great rivalry. And so today I got on Twitter and I asked Hurricanes fans to get their opinions on which rivalry is maybe the most intense for them as a Hurricanes fan. Um, my question to you, Carlos, is which rivalry means the most to you of all of Miami's rivalries?
Wow, that's a good question. To me, it's El Rey La Fritas versus El Mago La Fritas is the most intense rivalry in Miami. And it dates back a long time. No, but listen, to me, clearly number one is Florida State, just because it's the one that happens every year. So it's hard not to put them at the top, just because it's an opponent you face every year. Some of the greatest games in college football history were played over the 80s and 90s, and even early 2000s between Florida State and Miami. It is when you think rivalries, to me, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Now, Florida, of course, is in the top five, but I think if you're looking historically, to me, just when I grew up and the games that I got to see, those 80s games against Notre Dame to me were some of the most intense games I've ever witnessed on television and got a chance to go see in the Orange Bowl, luckily. Those were some intense games. Florida, of course, I would probably put third behind Notre Dame, just in my era, because it's been so few and far between, and the games haven't been as crazy to me. The most fun one I ever remembered was the 2002 game up in Gainesville, just being there and experiencing that for the first time. But after that, it's been sort of spotty. Really, the Hurricanes have handled business for the most part against the Gators, except for more recent years when the Gators had Tim Tebow and the 97 sack game and Manny Diaz's debut over there
It's in
uh,
Orlando.
in Orlando. That was fun. But I think if you're also thinking about just long term facing an opponent year after year, I think Virginia Tech has to be in the top five. And I think North Carolina has to be in the top five just because they've had Miami's number over the last few years, and they've also gotten some big wins against Miami over the years. I remember one in particular at Hard Rock. Gosh, I forget the game, the year was. I think it might have been 11 or 12, where the Hurricanes were favored. They should have won that game and lost it late. Just North Carolina's been a pain in the ass for the Hurricanes for a long time, and I'm sick of it.
I think most of Twitter and social media agrees with you. First of all, just my poll, and this I only posted it 3 hours ago. It says here, who is Miami's most intense football rivalry with? 82.8% Florida State. They're in first. Coming in second, Notre Dame, 8.2%. Florida is third, 6.6, and then Virginia Tech fourth, 2.4. 936 votes, so almost 1,000 people.
So what I'm shocked about is that people actually agreed with me on something, and that makes me feel a little bit better. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm a little confused, to be quite honest, because I'm so used to getting the backlash and the bullshit. So we'll see.
Um, just looking at the games, the teams that they've played the most over the years, Miami's played Florida State 66 times. Series is 33-33. They've played Florida 56 times. Miami leads 29-27. Pittsburgh, third teams that have played third most all time. 42 meetings. Miami leads 29-12-1. Virginia Tech is next, 40. 25-15 Miami Edge, and then Boston College fifth, 31 meetings, 25 for the Canes, six for the Eagles. And you got Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Syracuse, and Virginia in terms of the most frequent meetings with the Hurricanes. It's funny. I anytime you put something on on Twitter, Carlos, you get some funny responses. So of course, people put in write-in votes, right? For besides those four teams, they put in their own write-in votes. Finhead posted a photo of Mario looking in a mirror, pointing at himself as the most intense rivalry. Jeff Clevitt said MTSU question mark with a bunch of happy, laughing, crying faces. Um, Brian Rice says John Reese's accountant trying to make fun of the Canes. All the haters come out of the woodwork here, Carlos.
Yeah, I'm
Whenever
surprised
you
nobody put a picture of Pitbull in Pitbull Stadium saying if I use.
we got their home attendance as an answer. Somebody said here Duke. Actually, somebody I remember reading this earlier. Somebody posted the long walk from the locker room at Duke as Miami's biggest rival. Look, the Canes have been the butt of the joke for the better part of 20 years, Carlos, and I think this game, whether we want to admit it or not, if they lose this game, the repercussions of just the national embarrassment, right? People are going to say, "Oh, all this hype for Cam Ward, all of this hype for this team, you guys are the same old crap." Agree or disagree that if Miami loses this game, they're going to become basically a joke again or
I mean,
continue
are
to
they
be a
going to get
joke?
shit? Are they going to get clowned if they lose this game by the national media? Yeah, absolutely they will. Because anytime they lose a game, they get clowned by the national media, regardless of who it's against. Because they love to build Miami up when they're winning, and they love to tear them down the second they get a chance. Just because that's the way the national media, I guess, it's their
Mhm.
knee-jerk reaction to the Hurricanes. It's happened for decades. You see it every time the Hurricanes go 5-0, 6-0, they start saying, "Is Miami back? Is Miami back?" And they start hyping them up. And the second they lose, they were like, "Oh, we told you they weren't. We knew they weren't. They're fraudsters. They're fakes." And they start throwing it in the Hurricane fan base's face. Um, do I think it'll be catastrophic if they lose this first game? I don't. I'll be honest. I've told you multiple times. This game worries me, and it worries me for a few different reasons. And if they lose it, I don't think it's disastrous necessarily, depending on how they lose it. Just because one of the reasons why I'm nervous, new quarterback and a system he's never run before. He's coming from run and shoot offenses. This is not the same thing he's used to. His read progressions are going to be different. He's at his best when he gets the ball out quickly. I think Cam Ward was the third highest rated quarterback with passes under 2.5 seconds when he got the ball out within 2.5 seconds last year, according to PFF. I think Bo Nix and someone else was ranked ahead of him. That was it. Um, but when he holds on to the ball a little bit and tries to get creative and isn't certain where he wants to go with the football, he makes more turnover-worthy plays than most quarterbacks. I think he was ranked like 57th or something like that when it comes to turnover-worthy plays a season ago. So to me, the key is, does he understand the offense enough to be able to get rid of the ball quickly? And if he holds on to the ball, and he gets creative, that's where the problems start to arise. Not saying that Cam Ward's not going to be a great quarterback for them this season. I wish he had a better opponent, an easier opponent to settle in with so he can get acclimated because it's different than when you're running things in the spring, or it's different when you're in there, obviously in fall practice in the summer and running against your own team and scrimmaging where you're not live as a quarterback, where you're not getting hit. Um, and you're finally in a different environment. You're playing against a real opponent who's prepared for you and you're playing in that kind of environment. Say what you will about the Florida Gators. I can't stand their ass. I hate their fan base. They are the worst fan base in college football. Probably the worst, maybe second worst. Who knows? But they're one of my most disliked fan bases just because of their arrogance. Um, that stadium is not easy to play. When I went to go visit there in 2000, when I went to watch that game, 2002, it was to me impressive how alive that stadium becomes, that fan base, how raucous it can be. Even though they only have 10 teeth between them in that stadium, it helps them whistle, it helps them make noise. But they're intense, man. It's a rough environment for a first-year quarterback in a new environment, a new team trying to get off the ground in a new system that he's never really run before to try and lead this team to victory. Now, I think what will compensate for that to me is, trusting your offensive line, trusting Damian Martinez, trusting Mark Fletcher, trusting the running game, and then having Cam Ward play off of that. My concern is that Shannon Dawson will come into that game and want to be a little too cutesy with it and flashy at the beginning because one, he wants to get Cam Ward the Heisman, and two, he wants to be sort of break out of that mold of saying that he was a shitty offensive coordinator. Not that people have been saying that about him. I don't know who said that. So to me, that's the main concern there. Also, my other concern is, because of Cam Ward coming into this new offense and his turnover worthy plays, if they turn the ball over a couple times and aren't able to get it back from Florida, because the Gators don't turn over a whole lot. Say what you will about Graham Mertz, he's a dink and dunk guy, but he doesn't have a lot of turnover worthy plays. I think he was ranked top three in the least amount of turnover worthy plays as a quarterback by PFF last season. So it's going to be difficult to create turnovers. Hopefully, a defensive line changes that up a little bit for the Hurricanes. But there's a lot of concern going into this game because of the crowd, because of things. Ultimately, I think the Hurricanes should win this game, but it's a concern to me. It gets me nervous. But if they're able to get past that game, if they lose by three, right? Let's say they learn something from that. They gain something from that experience. If they have the real kind of guys that you think they have in that locker room in terms of leadership, it could be a situation like in 2000 where they lost to Washington, they righted the ship, and then the season took off in a different direction. It could be that kind of a season, or it could be another same old 8-4, 7-5 where this sort of derails them a little bit and they have to find their equilibrium later in the season.
Carlos, I love the fact that you're very intense and providing great analysis, and I want to be the jackass now and just bring up more things to fire up Miami fans in terms of, people responding to my question about the intense rivalry. So I get to be the jackass. Here's a response. Justin, Canada Kane says the bye week. The bye week is a
Listen,
big
the bye week has been a big rival over the last 10, 15 years.
Mark Ennis says slow internet speeds for all those Canes fans who want to sit there and talk trash on social media. Um, Cuello Duval, who's a Florida State fan, says
Wow.
kneeling, kneeling is a problem.
Ruelo Duval. That is
Yes.
both a disturbing and yet creative name.
Mikey in DFW says clock management. Mike Rutherford says counting is a big rival of the Miami Hurricanes. Um,
Tell you
what
what, we can count to five though.
Oh, brother, I'll tell you what. We're gonna get to some mailbag questions in a little bit here, but I love bringing up the hate and angst and just disdain because that's what college football is really predicated on, right? Like you get fired up for this Florida game because you hate the Gators, right? You really do.
I
There's a
do.
I mean, this is from your childhood. Like, can you think of the first time you said I hate the Gators? When was the first
Wow.
instinct in your life when you looked at that blue and orange and just said, "Oh, I can't stand these guys."
I think, it wasn't so much the a game itself. It was, in elementary school, having friends that had parents that went to UF and they were as a result, Gator fans, or for some reason I had friends who were in elementary school and their parents just got here from Cuba and they became Gator fans. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, why are you a Gator fan? And then just as life progresses, meeting these people that are Gator fans and the snobbery and the douchebaggery that comes from that fan base, yes, Miami, we are not a perfect fan base. I get it. We've got some warts. I understand that. But they're my people. They're my warts. You guys are douchebags. You guys think you're the greatest thing that's ever happened to college football. And if not for Tim Tebow and a happy accident of getting back into the national championship game under Steve Spurrier, your asses would be championshipless. Okay? You guys are not a dynasty. That little run with the murderers that you had on campus, literal murderers that you had on campus with Urban Meyer was about the extent of a dynasty that you guys had. I will give you this much. I'll take it a step further. Here's a hot take that's not very hot that you guys probably realize yourselves. You should have won more championships under Steve Spurrier, but you didn't. You guys underachieved under Steve Spurrier. How about that? So suck it. You guys wish you were the Hurricanes. You aren't the Hurricanes. Man, you do this to me on purpose. Damn it. You got me hyped up. The closer I get to game day, the more obnoxious I become. I'm already wearing green and orange all day, and this is your fault.
Emotions is what people love to see on the internet, Carlos. They want to see you fired up. Let me just go over a couple more factoids in this rivalry. Last time they met, obviously, August 24th, 2019. So this is going to be the first time in 5 years. I was in Orlando for that game, and I thought for sure Miami was going to win the game. And then I think it was a Jeff Thomas fumble, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, the punt.
on the punt, and then he also dropped the ball in the end zone. Um, you mentioned the sacks. I think there were 10 sacks in that game. Zion Nelson starting as a true freshman at left tackle. The offensive line is going to look a little different than the one Manny Diaz
Yes.
trotted out there the last time these two teams met. Florida has the biggest victory in the series, Carlos, 46-6. You got to go back to 1940. And the longest win streak in the series belongs to Florida, 7 consecutive wins from 1971 to 77. I want to share this because there used to be, the cool thing with college football that I love before realignment and all the other bull crap that's happened with the game here the last 25, 30 years is it used to have trophies, right, that were shared in rivalries, and whoever won got to take the trophy home. Well, I stopped by the University of Miami Hall of Fame last year, some point during the season. I ran into um, the gentleman who runs the UM Hall of Fame, who of course used to be uh, Sebastian the Ibis. He would dress up as Sebastian the Ibis, and so we
John
ended.
Ralph.
Yes, John Roth. And we were sitting there talking and we walk over and they got a bunch of cool memorabilia. If you've never been to the University of Miami Sports Hall of Fame, you need to go. You need to experience what that's like, especially if you're a diehard Hurricane and you want to see history. There's a bunch of cool things in there, but one of the things that's in there is the Seminole War Canoe,
Now you now only see in NCAA football, which disappeared for 11 years.
right? And so they've actually got the Seminole War Canoe, and I got John to tell me the story of how it ended up getting there. There's a story written in the Miami Herald many years ago, but essentially the trophy stopped being exchanging hands when Miami and Florida's rivalry ended. And Miami, of course, won the last meeting when they would meet annually in 1987. Um, Miami, of course, won that game 31-4 in the Orange Bowl. They met again in the Sugar Bowl in 2001. Hurricanes won that game. But since it stopped being an annual rivalry, essentially Miami was like, dude, we're not giving you the canoe back because it's not a rivalry anymore. Um, I just wanted to share that. I want people to, if you get a chance, go down there, check it out. There's a bunch of cool stuff. But let's review the
All,
last
all I all I heard is that the Gators are punks and they refuse to play the Hurricanes every year, and that's why that trophy no longer exists outside of the hands of the Hurricanes.
most young people, Carlos, you and I are gray bearded. Notice to all the listeners that follow us, no more coloring in, right? You and I
Yeah,
have accepted the
I've given
George
up.
Clooney or George Clooney era.
I'm in
Um,
my I'm in my aged Morgan Wallen stage.
if you look back at just the non-rivalry meetings, okay, Sugar Bowl, Canes won 37-20 in 2001. They met in Gainesville, the game you were at, 41-16. The Canes went in there, the number one ranked team. Florida was number six. Uh, 2003 in Miami, Canes win 38-33.
Comeback.
The infamous comeback and Devin Hester with the kick return and the whole thing. Then they met in the Peach Bowl, ranked again. Miami wins 27-10. And then the game that I attended in person in Gainesville, 26-3, Urban Meyer's team tacks on a late field goal in front of Randy Shannon and really got him angry. I remember that. 2013, the Al Golden game. Miami beats 12th ranked Florida at home 21-16. And then, of course, we mentioned the game in Orlando. For you, Carlos, is there I know you went in person to go see the game in Gainesville, but is there a moment that, I don't know, that when you think about the greatest plays in UM history that just stick out in your mind with the Gators? Because for me, there really isn't, other than the comeback in the Orange Bowl.
I mean, to me, the greatest play, the one that sticks out automatically, even though, wasn't they got down early in that game, that opening kickoff to Devin Hester,
Yep.
where he takes it to the house, and that Orange Bowl seemed like it's going to collapse upon itself because I was at that game also. Man, that to me was insane. The other one that sticks out to my mind because I was there, and people forget how that just sort of changed the momentum of the game and how it really just toppled the game over for the Hurricanes in 2002 was a Maurice Sykes interception, where he goes basically 100 yards for a touchdown, and that basically cleared out the stadium at that point. At that point, all Gator fans headed for the exits. They thought they still had a chance, and it was over. It was done. The entire fourth quarter, there was nothing but Hurricanes fans in that stadium. People walking out of the stadium yelling, "This is Canesville now, Canesville, Canesville." And then by the time we got to the club later on that night, there were no Gator fans in sight.
What club was it, by the way?
I forget the name of the club, but DJ Irie was spinning. So it was all Miami, and there were no Gator fans. The only Gator fans there were girls wanting to hang with Hurricane dudes.
I got you. All right. Let's get to some mailbag
So
questions,
we
Carlos.
took their stadium and we took their women, we took their city.
I'm not sure. Well, that's the way you do it, right? That's the way you conquer. All right, I'm gonna go to some of the mailbag stuff here before we get to the Hopometer because I have some interesting
The
comments in
Hopometer.
the Hopometer. Yes, as I told you before, I'm doing many more national stories, Carlos. And the Athletic last year asked me to do the Hopometer, which is
And
basically
this came down from National Athletic. That name was what they came up with.
they came up with the Hopometer, right?
Wow.
They wanted to gauge fan feedback. Are you hopeful or are you hopeless going into the
Wow.
season?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to read some of those comments here in a bit. But first, let's get to the mailbag because I promised we would do that. And by the way, if you're wondering why is this, or why are we already in the mailbag and why is this maybe a shorter episode than usual? We did have the interview with Kevin Brockway that I did on Tuesday. That will be part of the podcast that's put together by my audio engineer at The Athletic before they put it out there. But we wanted to come back with Carlos, have a segment where we talked about the Gators, the history of the rivalry, talk a little bit about the Hopometer, and then, of course, the mailbag. But we're going to go to the mailbag first. So
And
this,
if we have time at the end, I know I shared this at one point. I forget what year, maybe last year, or the year before. I will give my story about how I got to the game in 2002.
okay, please do. We'll do that here after the mailbag. J.K. Slay says, I already have tickets for the UF game in Miami, section 324. But I just got offered 30-yard line, row one seats, but would be in the heart of the UF section. Should I accept the tickets or stay in the Miami nosebleeds? Carlos, what do you do?
My man, I go row one. I actually, I'll say that's part of the story, is I had to sit in the Gator section for that game in 2002 by myself.
You were loud though. They weren't.
I was loud the entire game, but I was even louder in that fourth quarter when they were all walking towards the exits.
All right, this is Jake Campbell who gave me his rankings. He said FSU, Florida, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, UNC, which is exactly the way you had it. And he says Florida State and Florida 1 and 2 because it's state and it matters. FSU takes the cake because it's every season. Notre Dame gets the historic nod. The VT gets in because it's the Big East slash ACC old school rivalry. UNC gets in at 5 because I truly hate them. And then he says, because we haven't been able to beat them at all. They've been our daddy since Miami came to the ACC.
Yeah,
Agree or disagree? Yes, we went over that already, Jake, for sure.
yeah.
Um, Callie Kane 818 says in his top five, FS Poo number one, Gattards, number two, Notre Dame three, Virginia Tech four, and North Carolina five. So exactly the same way. Nick Green, Big Juice 52 on Twitter says, "Here's a good one for you since you like stats, Manny. When was the last time Miami was favored on the road to an SEC team?" I think I have the answer, but I want you to confirm it. Nick, that is great question. Um, I've got to ask one of my editors because he's able to look up spreads through a database, and he would be able to tell me what the betting line was for Miami the last time they were a road favorite. But they are still a road favorite in this game, Carlos, by 2 points. So my guess was Miami. I don't think Miami was favored when they played at Florida in 2002. And if
Yeah, they were favored in 2002.
they were favored going into that game,
They had to be. They were just coming off the national championship.
I don't know if they may have been an underdog because Florida was a top 10 team at the time. So I would have to look and I'm not sure. I mean, they haven't played a ton of SEC teams in the regular season on the road in a while because of ACC play and just you had LSU, the LSU game that was played in Texas. I'm trying to think the Alabama game, they certainly weren't favored when they lost in Atlanta.
No.
Um, I'm thinking of other recent SEC, sort of early season kickoffs. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm gonna have to look that one up, brother. Nick, I appreciate the question. All right, this one's from Jason. Jason Real Hip Hop, one of your favorites. What side of the football does Miami have the potential to be or to put up top five numbers in the nation and lead the team to a playoff berth? Is there a top five unit? A top five stat in your mind?
Defensive line. I think that would be the number one, the one that jumps out to me. I think I don't know about top five. The offensive line's certainly really good, but I think the defensive line to me is a little bit better.
Okay. I think you talk about top five, maybe yards per play. I think if they're going to be a playoff team, a team that wins the conference, which is what I said they're going to be this year, I think they could be a top five offense in yards per play. A lot of explosive points. I don't know that they'll be top five in scoring, but I think they could be top 10, top 15. That
Yeah, I
that
think
would
they might be top five in sacks because of that defense line and the strength of that defense line and the depth.
All right, this is from Andrew V. What concerns you most about the UF game? What weaknesses can they exploit against Miami?
I think it's more, to be honest, if the Gators win this game, I don't think it's so much because they're better than the Hurricanes or they actually go out there and execute in a way that puts Miami in a bind. You're like, oh my God, we have no counter for it. I think it's because of Miami's self-inflicted wounds that they do lose that game. And like I said, to me, the concern is I don't think the Gators have an advantage anywhere in the field. I think if anything, maybe their explosive wide receiver against the corners of Miami. Maybe that's the one advantage they may have. Other than that, I don't see any advantages on the field for them. But to me, the concern is, new quarterback, new system, bunch of new guys via the transfer portal coming in, playing in that environment, game one, and trying to gel together. There's going to be missteps. Also, as an offensive coordinator, Shannon Dawson, trying to figure out the best ways to call plays for Cam Ward, how he's going to, whether he sticks with his own sort of way of calling plays like he has in the past, like his own rhythm, or he adjusts his sort of scheme to fit Cam Ward, what he does, how he gets the playmakers the ball, these new guys on offense, including Damian Martinez. So those are all things to me that concern me. So to me, it's not the Gators that concern me. It's the Hurricanes themselves and what they do, whether they turn the ball over or they have missteps. If there's a lot of penalties on the side of the Hurricanes because they're misaligned, false starts, things of that nature. The other main concern that we're not talking about is, although the offensive line is very good, one of the key components to an offensive line is be able to make line calls and make adjustments and audible. And in that environment, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, not only because of the noise, but also because you have a brand new center and a brand new quarterback, and communication will be an issue.
That's fair. I will say some of the feedback I've gotten, Carlos, and I told you this at your house when I saw you not too long ago. Zach Carpenter, um, somebody mentioned to me that, Miami's coaches apparently like him even more than Matt Lee in terms of not only his size, but his demeanor. The fact that he's not loud and boisterous isn't a big deal to them. They see him as maybe a potentially better center, even than Matt Lee, and a guy that they got a ton of confidence in. So, but you're right, that'll be a very interesting matchup. I think the one area you have to give Florida a distinct advantage is their receivers over Miami's defensive backs. I think between Chimere DK, Elijah Badger, and Trey Wilson. Those are three legitimate receivers, guys that can make plays. DK was productive at Wisconsin. He's got familiarity with Graham Mertz. They were teammates there. Graham Mertz last season completed almost 73% of his attempts, so he's accurate. He only had three interceptions. Trey Wilson was one of the best freshmen in the country, had 61 catches, and Badger led Arizona State with 65 catches. So they're going to be a problem, and that's why I think the Gators will keep themselves in this game and not get blown out of the stadium because they don't have their lead running back healthy. Montrell Johnson is still coming off of surgery. Um, the right side of their offensive line isn't very good. And so Miami's going to have some chances to exploit stuff there, maybe make them one-dimensional. But I think you can't just sort of brush off and say, "Well, the Gators are terrible," and there's
Right. No, I agree.
they've got weapons and tight ends that can produce as well. They've got a couple different guys at that position that can be productive. So it'll be that it's not going to be a cakewalk for Miami. All right, let's keep going. Next question here. Well, not a question, but Nate Wardle says FSU, UF, Notre Dame would be my top three. Virginia Tech four. And he says not sure on five. Maybe Boston College. Von Kane, a frequent listener and commenter, says FSU, UF, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, North Carolina. So it feels like we pretty much have a solid top five. Maybe the fifth one is the debatable one, but ultimately, um, I think we can agree that the top four is pretty much set in stone. Those are the four teams that everybody considers a rival. Carlos, let's go to the Hope-O-Meter. I don't think there's any more questions for today's show, but we'll go to the Hope-O-Meter because I put this together for the Athletic last year, and essentially fans have to say, hey, we're a fan of such and such team. Then they vote. Are you hopeful for the season or are you fearful of this season? And so I sit there, I do the math, I tally up all these ballots. We got over 4,000 ballots that were sent in. And so I sit there, I do the math, and then I compare it to last year, right? Like who's more hopeful than last year and what percentage of fans are hopeful. And so Miami, we got close to 50 people who actually filled this out and sent back their responses. 42 of them are hopeful, seven are fearful. So the hope percentage is 86% for Miami, which I think is a pretty good number. It's a 19% change over last year. Last year, the hope went from being 100% in 2022 to 67% after Mario had a really rough season. But I wanted to get through and get to some of the comments here because I have access to all of this stuff so
So
we
you
can,
so you said it was 42 and 7 for the Hurricanes, and
yeah,
50 votes were brought in.
just below 50, just below 50, 49. I rounded up.
Okay, I was like, if there was 50, there was one dude that just ordered a panko lechon by mistake and didn't realize it.
Yes, and the Hopometer story will be coming out next week if you want to read it. We do this again for everybody in college football, and I'm going to read the not so optimistic and hopeful. This is Jeff Cook filled this out. He's one of the subscribers there at The Athletic. He says, truly teetering between options, but I went with not optimistic for two reasons. One, the track record of Miami since our recent peak is over 2 decades away. And when you've been in such a valley, every climb feels laborious. And then number two, the talent acquisition has been impressive, but I won't believe the hype until I see it in action where this team soundly beats teams they're supposed to. Getting hyped for UF and Gainesville should be easy. Getting pumped for Q's on the road after Thanksgiving is the type of game Miami has lost too many times over the years. Carlos, when you hear that, is it sound thinking? Are you more like Jeffrey Cook, or are you more like me who says they're going to win the ACC this year?
I'm sort of in between. I believe they should win the ACC this year, but I've been through too much trauma to let that go and just say, yeah, it's going to happen. Of course it's going to happen. I mean, I've seen it too much. And just like you said, there's too many games that they've lost that they had no business losing, specifically in the ACC, that you walk in there thinking, okay, this should be an easy one. Then all of a sudden they lay an egg. And no matter who's been at quarterback or who's been playing for this team, even in 2017 when they had that fantastic season, they walk into Pittsburgh undefeated and lay an egg and finish with one loss and then just get their asses handed to them by Clemson and Wisconsin right after. So this team has given me enough scars, ulcers, hemorrhoids to make me be a little bit cautiously optimistic. I'll say that. I will roll. My philosophy is, enjoy every game as it comes, take it one game at a time. It is what it is, each game, and just enjoy the ride because you only get 12 of these in a regular season. You better enjoy every single one. Hopefully, you get a 13th in a bowl game and maybe a 14th and 15th after that.
All right. This is from Jeff P. The reason why he is not optimistic and hopeful. Coaching. Mario Cristobal is an elite recruiter. The roster is talented, but for his Nepo scholarship to his nephew, he's a mediocre game coach at best, vastly overrated. His offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, other staff all left after his first season. There's a reason why he's not good. No response from you. All right. I'll
All right,
take that.
listen, I've said multiple times, I think Mario, to me, as far as a coach, is in that Ed Orgeron type level, right? He's
Yeah.
not going to out scheme you. You're not going to be afraid that Mario or Orgeron are going to come in there with a game plan that's going to set the world on fire and make you think, holy shit, how do we counter this? What they are going to do is amass enough talent to where they overwhelm you and they win the arms race, right? And I think if Miami does what they're supposed to do this year and win at least 10 games, get at least to the ACC title game. If they do win the ACC championship, even better, so they make that playoff spot and get a top four bid, then they're going to continue to amass talent, not only recruiting, but in the transfer portal from even higher end individuals that want to make a move and win now and raise their profile for the NFL. And at that point, when the talent becomes so overwhelming that they have no choice to win, I think Mario can make this team elite again.
All right. Joe, Susie, Andy, JDW, and Jacob Whitaker, the other followers at The Athletic, readers, subscribers at The Athletic, who all said they were not optimistic, all basically saying the same thing. Great recruiter, bad game day coach. Miami has to finally be relevant again, prove they can do it on the field. I don't care about the recruiting, do it on the field. All right, now I'm gonna get to the optimistic stuff because we're gonna end on a happy note here, Carlos. This is why Ethan A is optimistic. Cam Ward and Damian Martinez make me think we can overcome normal Miami stupidity. Um, this is from Peter. I've been hurt many, many times before, but my optimism, but it feels different this year. I think the Hurricanes have a favorable schedule and the talent to do something special. Now let's just hope the coaching staff doesn't cost us. And then this is John L. With multiple recruiting seasons under his belt at Miami, Mario Cristobal can hopefully put a strong season together with a team built upon his guys. However, the in-game coaching definitely needs to get better. So everybody pretty much has the same concerns, Carlos. It's not just me and you saying this, right? It's the fans. This is the feedback. This is the regurgitation that we are getting from people. Okay. I mean, look, Kyle, Cristobal has stockpiled so much talent. We got to see a return on it this year, right? The coaching. Dear God, the Georgia Tech loss won't happen again. Will it? Says Brandon. TVD is gone. Even if Cam isn't who we think he is, so long as he isn't throwing two or three picks a game, that should be good for a win or two. Plus, the defensive line is stacked. Again, everybody's optimistic and hopeful. Carlos are the good majority, but it's like in the back of their mind they can't get over it. And I think the only way you do, bro, is by beating Florida game one and having it carry over.
Yeah, I mean, even if they beat the shit out of Florida in game one, it's not going to make me relinquish my fears and my PTSD because they beat the crap out of Texas A&M last year when Texas A&M was a ranked opponent, and you felt like maybe that was a sea change, and then lo and behold, here we are back at it again. So I'm taking it one game at a time. Like I said, I'm just going to take it one game at a time. I'm like a recovering alcoholic. I need to just, one day at a time, keep earning my chips till we get to that point where I can say, all right, I've hit that 1 year mark and I'm sort of, now sailing through it a little bit better than I was before. But not gonna happen until they prove it to me on the field.
There are two fan bases that are 100% hopeful in the ACC. 100%. Everybody who replied to this poll said they were hopeful. Do you want to guess who they are?
They are Duke and SMU.
They are not Duke and SMU. They are NC State and Louisville fans. All 32 voters for NC State said they are hopeful. Louisville, 16 responses, all of them hopeful. If you go by percentages, Virginia Tech, almost 100%, Carlos. 98% hopeful. That's a 35% change. So the people in Hokie land, man, 60 out of 61 is a pretty good number in terms of Brent Pry, and they only won 7-6 last year too. But somehow, the people in Virginia Tech have been renewed with faith. And here's another good one: Syracuse. 44 of the 45 respondees for Syracuse are hopeful. That makes it 98%. That's a 37% change over last year. So Kane's up 19%, but there's other teams around the country, especially in this league, that are all much more hopeful. The percentage
That's
that
because
was,
the standard is different. Because if you're when you're talking about hopeful for Virginia Tech, they're hopeful they can get 8 wins. When you're talking about hopeful for the Hurricanes in this fan base, we're talking about can these guys get into the playoff? Can they win the ACC? You're talking about a different standard of hope, right?
yeah, biggest drop-offs, by the way, Carlos, if you're interested for the ACC.
Florida State.
No, Florida State 96%. It stayed even. They were 96% hopeful last year, 96% hopeful this year. Some of the biggest drop-offs, I'll do the bottom five. Pittsburgh, North Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest, and Clemson. A little bit of faith lost in Dabo Sweeney after last season. They're only in at 78%. Pittsburgh was the biggest drop. Pat Narduzzi went from winning the league title, Carlos, to now the hopeful percentage in Pittsburgh is 28%, a 65% drop over last year. North Carolina next, they're down to 38%. Mac Brown, people thinking he probably needs to retire, down 39% from a year ago. And then Duke, of course, they had Mike Elko. They were 100% satisfied with Mike Elko. Manny Diaz comes in. They're only 65% hopeful now. So
They must watch a lot of Hurricane football and realize why they shouldn't be as.
shouldn't be as excited about it. All right, listen, thank you for tuning in to Wide Right,
Oh, hold
Carlos.
on, hold on.
Go
Are we
ahead.
gonna do
Oh,
my
oh
Florida story?
yes, we got to do your Florida story. Yes,
All
and
right,
then
it's
we
it's
and then we wipe out.
apropos. It's
Yes.
apropos. Okay, so
Yes.
it is 2002. I'm at work. At this point in my life, I am 21, 22 years old. I don't remember exactly. 21. Um, and I'm sitting at my desk working for FPL as a customer service representative. I have to work all day. It is a Friday, and all of a sudden I get a call from my buddy, my best friend, who tells me, "Hey, get out of work right now. Call out sick for the rest of the day." I'm like, "I'm at work. I can't do it." "You figure out a way. I've got tickets to the UF game. Let's go." And I'm like, "Do you have a place to stay too?" "Yes, I got it all covered. Get your shit and let's go." So I was like, "All right." I faked a stomach ache, left, got my stuff packed. He picked me up with another friend of ours. We hit the road. When we get to Stewart, more or less, or that in that area, and we're on I-75, so basically that area around Florida, way past Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. Now we're in Martin County, I believe. He turns to me and says, "I lied. I don't have tickets to the game. And also, we don't have a place to stay." So at that point,
Did you kill him?
I'm ready to fucking kill him. I'm ready to strangle him. Okay. Mind you, he's a police officer. He's a first year police officer at this point. And I'm ready to commit murder on an officer of the law on the road to Gainesville. Okay. So the guy we're with was like, "Hey, don't worry about it. I know some girls that, we could probably stay at their apartment. I'll give them a call and we'll see what happens." All right, cool. The guy ends up arranging the housing for us. So, yes, we've got a place to stay. The problem is there are 15 other people staying in a two-bedroom apartment there. Okay. So we are literally sleeping on the floor in the living room. That's the sleeping arrangement. Okay. So that's problem number one. Next day's the game. We get up. We're excited. We start getting ready. We start, doing a little pregame. We had gone out the night before to the swamp across from the stadium, talked a whole lot of shit. Actually had a car pull up next to us, had us lower the window, and in typical, this is the most stereotypical thing I've ever seen in Gainesville. They yell at us, "Go back to Cuba, you spicks." And I'm like, "Dude, seriously? You're in a camel pickup truck with a gator flag and you yell this at us?" So I lean out the window and go, "Hey, at least my mother's not my aunt."
Sounds like a
So,
Miami, Florida fight.
so anyway, next day we go to the stadium and I'm like, "How the hell are we gonna get in?" It's like, "No, don't worry about it. My buddy knows John Vilma. He's gonna leave us tickets at will call." Cool. We go to the will call. How many tickets are left? One. One ticket. Guess who's getting that ticket? My buddy. So and he tells me, "Don't worry about it. I'll scalp a ticket for you here from somebody. I'll pay for it since I made you come up here. Okay? And I'll get you into the game. Don't worry." So we're walking around, we're looking to scalp a ticket, and we find a guy, a Gator fan, willing to sell his ticket, and my buddy opens his wallet. Now, what did I tell you he did for a living at that point?
He's a
Police
police
officer,
officer.
right? He opens his wallet and goes, guess what's the first thing this guy sees when he opens the wallet? A badge.
Mm.
Trying to scalp a ticket. That dude turns and runs off, scared that he
Wow.
was about to be arrested for scalping a ticket. I'm now ready to murder my buddy for the second time in 2 days because I'm like, "What are you doing? Showing your badge while we're trying to buy a ticket outside here." Finally, we end up getting an additional ticket. But my ticket, like I said earlier, is in the UF section, and he's sitting front row at the UM section, right? Because he got it from John Vilma. So he's like, "Don't worry, just come over with me, stand next to me in the aisle. Nobody's going to say anything." So we go, we stand in the aisle, whatever game's about to start. And of course, in typical Gator fan fashion, all the Gator fans that are near that section start yelling, "Hey, that guy doesn't have a ticket. He's not sitting in a seat. He needs to get out of here." They rat me out. So I
Oh my
get tossed from
gosh.
the section. I have to go sit in the Gator section. All right. So I'm sitting there all alone, surrounded by Gator fans, and I am in there talking shit the entire game. After Mo Sykes returns that interception, I'm turning around, I'm waving bye to everybody, telling them to go home, having a great time, yelling Canesville, and I discover that there were actually Hurricane fans 3 rows up behind me, but I couldn't see them because of all these damn Gator fans. So again, fantastic game. We win. Now the story is not over yet. I hook up back with my friend at the end of the game. We're walking out of the stadium, and we're like, "Where's the apartment that we're staying at?" He's like, "I don't know. I don't know how to get there." "What about the people that we were with that dropped us off?" "I don't know where they're at." "Don't you have their phone number?" "They're not picking up." "Okay. How do we get back now?" So we just start randomly walking in a direction that we believe is where this apartment building is.
Oh my
As we are
gosh.
walking, a Mazda Miata pulls up next to us, and it happens to be some girl dressed in a Hooters uniform. I'm not making this shit up. She turns to us and goes, "Are you guys lost? Do you need help?" And we look at each other like, "What is this serious? This gotta be a prank, right? Like, really?" We're like, "Yeah, we really don't know where our friends are staying." We described the building more or less. She was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I know where that is." So We hop in the Miata, me and this guy, right next to each other. I want to strangle him after all the adventures he's put me through. But we're with a Hooters girl, and she's talking to us as she's driving. She's saying that they're going to go to, Crystal River. They're going to go do all these great things. Her and her friends. Why don't we hang out with them tomorrow? And I'm like, this is getting better by the minute. How does this go from disaster to just paradise? And as we're getting near the apartment building, because we're like, oh yeah, more or less, this is where it's at, whatever. As we're turning in, her face turns white, white like a ghost. He says, "Oh my God, this is my boyfriend's apartment building. Get out of the car now." So she throws us out of the car about half a block away from where we're staying, speeds off. There was no Crystal River. There was no tubing. There was none of that the next day because apparently her boyfriend lived in the same building. Uh, Thankfully, we found the apartment. We got back, got changed, got dressed, and went out that night. And as I said, had a great time with DJ Irie.
Wow, that is a fabulous story. I hope Miami fans that go to Gainesville next week come back to us and maybe share some of those stories either on Twitter or whatever, on our YouTube page so that we can find out what sort of great adventures maybe they've been on a Hurricanes road trip. In fact, I was going to write this story last year, but I told you when I was I think which game was it that I went on the road to? Was it the North Carolina? I can't remember anymore. I think it was North Carolina, where Susan Miller Dagan and I and one of the other reporters, I think it was Adam Lichtenstein, we went to a lot of the pregame festivities and they were making us take shots and have fun with them pregame. And it was a great time. But those people, it's the same group of people that go to every single game. I should reach out to them and bring them on the show, or at least have a couple of them come on and talk about just the tailgating and what it's like to go to a road game. Because like you just described, you went without a ticket, you went without a place to stay, but you still made it the best you could. And
Yeah,
that to me is like the coolest thing about college football, that you can just do those kind of things and have those kind of memories,
and
things
and
that
I've
last
got a
you
new
forever.
rivalry that's brewing up with one of my friends. His son just started college this year. He just got up, moved into his dorm. They are my friend is a Miami Hurricane alumni, double alumni, bachelor's and master's. His wife also bachelor's and master's, University of Miami. Hurricane fans all their life, all our friends. The kids, Hurricane fans growing up their whole life. The son, super smart kid, lots of scholarship offers, bright futures, all this kind of stuff. Decided to go to the University of Florida because of the scholarship money and basically getting a free education, basically getting paid a little bit to go to UF. So this lifelong Hurricane fan has to deal with the fact that his son is now a Gator
Oof.
and he's going to be up there, and his son is now flipping to the Gators and is going to be talking shit to him about this game. So depending on how this goes, this could be very good for my friend or very bad for the rest of his life.
It'll be something you won't forget, though.
Yeah,
For sure. For sure. Carlos, thanks for sharing the story. Thanks for coming on like you always do to come and do the show with me. I appreciate you, brother. Uh, we will come back with another episode next week. Probably talking about what the first depth chart looks like and the kind of preview the game won last time. But it is close to kickoff.
yep,
The Seminoles are playing Saturday. If you want to check out what the rivals look like, them and Georgia Tech, two teams on Miami schedule, playing at noon Saturday in Dublin, Ireland. So it'll be something I'm going to be watching to see how good that Florida State offense is without all those stud receivers and tight ends that they lost. So
yeah. And listen, I'm going to be putting together my own game preview. I think I'm going to try and release that tomorrow just so it's ahead of everybody else's game previews.
yes.
And also because I got a text message today from a certain someone saying he wants to do a hype recording for the UF game, and I think you know who that is, Raul from
Mm,
Hialeah. So
mm.
I think he's going to drop a UF pregame hype next week for the game. So I'm going to leave that all to Raul, let him have his airspace that one day.
All right. I'm looking forward to that for sure. Make sure you follow Carlos on Twitter. Carlos, give him your Twitter address again.
MIA Ledo, is that what it is? I don't even remember anymore.
I don't remember either. I always forget what's what anymore. And
That's
I'm
close
still
enough.
I'm still calling it Twitter, by the way. I should be calling it X or whatever
Hey, it's
the
still
hell
Joe
it is.
Robbie to me too.
All right, brother. Thanks again for coming on.
Peace.